Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Nonviolence International's YouTube channel. My name is Nimesh, and in this latest installment of the Spotlight series, I have the great privilege of speaking with Andrea Palomo-Robles. Andrea is the executive coordinator of the Satyagraha Institute, and she has been involved with the Satyagraha Institute since 2016. She has collaborated nationally and internationally with various peace, leadership, and human rights organizations. Andrea is a political scientist and studied nonviolence at the Gujarat Vidyapith University, which is founded by Gandhi. She has been a speaker and workshop facilitator on issues of conflict, nonviolence, and peace in the Americas and in Europe. Andrea, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you. I'm very, very happy to have the opportunity to be collaborating with Nonviolence International, and just very happy to be here and sharing a bit with your audience.
Yeah, awesome. So I want to talk about the name of the institute. The term Satyagraha, which was coined by Gandhi to describe his method of nonviolent civil resistance. I think in Sanskrit, it literally translates to truth force. So I'm wondering, what does Satyagraha mean to you, and how does this term guide your work in the nonviolence field?
So what people ask me first always is like, how do I pronounce that?
Right.
So yeah, you said it correctly. I think the way they would say it in India is Satyagraha, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, as you said, two parts word that comes from Sanskrit, and it means Satya is truth, and Agraha is like force or embracement or something. But I'll go more in detail there. For me, Satyagraha means collectiveness. So for me, that is how do we find truth in our limited capacity as humans? And this for me means that we need each other. So we cannot find that truth if we only go by ourselves, right? So we need each other. We need to listen. We need to be tolerant. We need to try to understand other perspectives. So I will summarize it as collectiveness. And I also want to say that Satyagraha means also love. When Gandhi was looking for a name to give his movement, he wanted to call it love. But then he understood that the word love has different meanings in different contexts and historical moments. So he was presented then with the idea of Satyagraha and some other words, but then Satyagraha convinced him that it was the right word to use. I like to define it as embracing truth. Agraha can also mean something like embrace or hold on to, something like this. So truth, sometimes we have a problem with the word truth because it sounds like, what is truth? Limited to what, or who defines it, right? That's also why I'm trying to explain a bit more of why truth, collectiveness, limited capacity, and so on. So truth is understood as a path. So not as an ultimate stage that we reach. So Gandhi was clear in recognizing that as humans, we have a limited capacity and we are learning throughout our lives. So he invited us to search for truth and walk that path, in which I believe we can only find a more complete view when we include others and show ourselves in a loving way. So for me, that means that in every action, I try and stop and ask myself, is this coming from love? Am I doing things in a loving way as opposed to acting from resentment, hatred, revenge? Yeah, I think I want to summarize it into collectiveness and love.
I love that idea of truth not as this like absolute thing, but as sort of a path, and we are all on this path searching for truth together. I think that is a really beautiful vision that Gandhi articulated, that your organization and Nonviolence International are trying to put forth in the world. So I'm curious, how did you first get involved in the nonviolence world? And can you talk about your personal journey as a nonviolence practitioner and the work you've done and continue to do with the Satyagraha Institute?
This is a difficult part for me because I sometimes struggle a little bit to talk about myself and my my experience and so on, but I will try. So I started as a very young leader. I was 15 or 16 or something like this when I got involved in, well, I'm a scout. So in scouting, we have different spaces in which we can talk, make decisions, make proposals for our regional level and the national level. So I was very active there, and I got selected to go several times to our national forums to talk about proposals for how to make things better for scouting in Mexico, Mexican. So that's how I started to get involved in this world of the social things. So for me, it was very interesting to be part of conversations on youth engagement. So I became very passionate with all of these and just doing things and making proposals and thinking about how to improve things in general. And then I had the opportunity to participate in some models of the United Nations. I like that work very much. For me, it was so nice to be able to learn about things that are happening in the world and how we could find some, imaginary solutions. But that was great. So that was a bit more of looking at other things that happen outside of my context, which I think is a very important thing that people should try. Mm-hmm. So this is what happened. And then in one of those models, I had the opportunity to get to know someone from an international organization. I wanted to do more. They were working for human rights. Mm-hmm. And I said, I want to do something with what's happening in the world. But now it was like, for real, I want to be part of this change. So I joined the organization, which meant I was going to get emails and things like this. But then at some point I thought, okay, I wanted to do more. So I got an invitation to attend their 50-year anniversary. So I went there. I was 17 years old by then. And I found this person again, the one who was speaking in the event. And I said, well, I joined the organization, but I want to do more. So he said, well, you can perhaps start an activists group in your region. And I said, well, that would be great. And I said, but I'm only 17. Is that okay? And he said, yeah, no problem. We can talk to the coordinator of activists and let's see what happens. So for 1 year, I was training. I was having some training. I was learning about human rights and the way they function internationally and so on. Mm-hmm. And I started our activists group, which I'm very happy to say that now it's still running. It's been 10, 11 years since that happened. So I'm very, very satisfied with how that work has been developing. And from then I got more opportunities. I was invited to be part of a program from Scouting also, which is called Messengers of Peace. And then in that work and seeing how young people specifically there, but people with their talents and their passions can do more for their communities. So I thought, this is what I want to do. Human rights was great, but peace work was the perfect fit for me. So I thought I can combine all this knowledge that I have with leadership, with young people, with wanting to improve the world. So I thought peace is what brings all of those elements together. So that's how it started. And then I've had more opportunities with more organizations in the national, international levels. And well, now I'm starting my journey as an executive director for the Institute. I've been part of the Institute since 2016, as you mentioned before. I participated in 5 of our programs in Mexico and in the US. And I also went to our partner program in India. And I've been part of the coordinating committee for about 5 years. So that has been my journey with the Institute. And now very, very happy to take on this role and see what we can do with more young leaders reaching more countries, more regions of the world, and also promoting some more partnerships like what we're doing with Nonviolence International.
Mhm. Perfect. I didn't know that you did Model UN. That's funny. I did Model UN too when I was in high school. So
It's
that's cool.
great.
Yeah, it is great.
Yes, it's a game, but it really opens up your mind
Yeah.
to what is happening in the world, which I think sometimes we miss. We are so preoccupied with what's going on in our close circle, which is also very important. I'm not saying it's not,
Right.
but there is much more. And what can we do from our place to help the people around us, but also the other people who are in a broader circle around us?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, one thing that I really admire about like my organization and sort of the nonviolence world in general is like a genuine concern with the international and people all across the globe, even though like we're in America. Like I talked to George Lakey, I did a spotlight interview with him a while back, and he told me about his experience being an unarmed bodyguard in Sri Lanka, which is the country where my family is from. And that was really cool.
Wow.
Nonviolence International has like, we've sent unarmed civilian protectors to Western Sahara. So I really love this sort of the focus on the international. I think it's quite
Absolutely.
important. Yeah.
Yes.
So I want to talk to you about what I see as sort of a unique aspect of Gandhian nonviolence and Gandhi's philosophy, which is that he saw nonviolence not just as like a political thing or a method for political change, but also as like a deeply spiritual practice. And Gandhi frequently talks about like self-purification as being necessary for practicing nonviolence. There's this concern with the inner life. So I was curious, how do you focus on your inner life, and how important do you think this sort of self work is to the practice of nonviolence?
When you talk about this, it sounds like you are enlightened or something like this, but
Right.
you're not.
Uh-huh.
Well, I'm not. I don't know. So I think it's very important to first recognize that we are imperfect and that we are trying. I want to talk about one resource. I want to make this answer very concrete. We have two people, Clark and Carl. They are the two founders of the institute. They started with this idea a few years ago, 6, 7 years ago. No, more, 8, 9 years ago. And Clark wrote this book that is available online if people want to go find it. It's called Satyagraha and the Inner Life. So it's a very beautiful resource. I like looking at it and use it, in everyday situations. And I want to read a couple of sentences from the introduction of the book. It says, Satyagraha is an adherence to truth as it unfolds. I think that's very powerful. Satyagraha is the social power which arises when we act with kindness, respect, patience, generosity, and selfless service. We transform society by transforming ourselves and by engaging with others in a spirit that encourages their reflection and self-transformation. So this little book is a collection of pieces of reflection that Clark has put together. Very short. It's very practical also. I think you can just sit down at the end of your day or something like this, or at the beginning of your day, which is something that we do when we have our programs in the Institute. Just read a little bit of what there is. It's 4 or 5 paragraphs normally, and then a few quotes or little readings that you can reflect on, and some questions that you can do to yourself, or you can ask in a small group. So you will find things in this book that you will face when you're working for social justice or for human rights or for, all of these things that we're working on with nonviolence. It's just very beautiful. It just brings me back to all of these things, and I get some strength from the experiences I've had with the Institute.
Thank you for that book recommendation. I love the line, like, we transform society by transforming ourselves. I think when we look out into the world, like, there's like climate change, police brutality, like authoritarianism, war, like so many big things that it can feel really overwhelming, um, if we want to try to change the world, right? Like, we're like, how do I do that? But I think knowing that we can make a difference by transforming ourselves, by transforming our relationships with other people, and that change starts, as a ripple in communities and spreads out. I think that's a really empowering thing to have as people. Yeah.
Yes, and sometimes when you were saying that it sounds overwhelming, as you mentioned in the beginning, I've been giving some conferences and workshops, and when I start talking about peace, I've always found that peace is this ideal that we all have. It's so unreachable, almost.
Yeah.
It's so perfect. It's so unattainable. It looks like it. It's not, but we have that idea because it's just a perfect ideal that we have in our mindset or something. I don't know how to explain this better. But I like telling people, peace is there. It's in small actions. And then I ask them, what can you do from now in your home or in your community, in your school, with your family? Just ask yourself what you can do right now to contribute to that ideal, because it's not really an ideal. We live it, or not, unfortunately, right? But we can do something about it in our everyday lives, and it's not unreachable. It is, of course, if we want a perfect world, it will take a long time, but we can start now and transform it, transform the situations that we are living in.
Definitely something to ponder. I'm a big fan of the Vietnamese Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh, who passed away a couple months ago. And I think I may be like misquoting him, but I think he has a line that says like, there is no way to peace, like peace is the way. And that is something that I try to carry with me every day.
Yeah, very powerful.
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, you were a student at the Gujarat Vidyapith University in India, which was founded by Gandhi himself. I'm really curious about that experience. Was there anything you learned that surprised you or fundamentally changed or transformed the way you think about nonviolence?
It was altogether a wonderful experience. It was every day learning about Gandhi, his life, his philosophy, Indian culture. We had the opportunity to go and see the places where Gandhi was. So, well, here I also want to invite people. We like to have young people, but everybody is welcome. So you can go there. The couple of the previous 2 years, they didn't have the program. We know why. Let's not go too much into details there. But I will hope that this year they will have the program. Otherwise, next year or every year it's happening. So it's an international course. It's a diploma course on Gandhian nonviolence in theory and practice. So they like to have international students coming together and learning from Gandhi in this university that he founded. He was teaching there and everything. So it's just great. And everybody can just go. So you can go and find the name of the university or contact us or something. And it's a 3-month course. It's like a semester. So it's 3-4 month course. And you just go and see how people live in India and hear from people who actually met him or who work with people who worked with him, read his books, and it's just wonderful. It's a beautiful experience. What I found more surprising, that was your question, I believe, was the constructive program. So there is also a book from Gandhi about the constructive program. It's a tiny book. it was, well, it's a tiny book with a lot of thought in it. So Gandhi, just for context, for those who don't know very, very well what happened with him. So India was looking for its independence, and Gandhi was a very important leader in that movement. So he thought that there was so much that was being lost in this process in which they did not have their independence. Mm-hmm. So, you know, some of the power of the people was lost, and some cultural things that they consider important were lost, and very simple things that we may think, like their clothing that they used to do, and they used to, you know, spin their cotton and do their clothes, and it was such an important part of their society, but also their economy, and it was also sustainable, and it made sense because of the weather, and you know, they were using cotton and not other synthetic fabrics. And then other things were introduced into their culture, and some were lost. So he wanted people to regain that power, to find it again. And there is something called Purna, swaraj, that is translated as complete independence. So he wanted people to have that power of themselves back. And why I'm talking about the constructive program and Purna Swaraj is, I like to see it as, in today's words, we would call these two things a strategic plan, the constructive program, and Purna Swaraj, complete independence, something like this, as sustainability. He just wanted his people to have a plan for what was going to happen in the future when they got their independence back, and how they were going to sustain themselves and to protect the environment again, and to include women, and to include young people, and to eliminate the caste system, and to have equality, and to have the religions coming together. So that's what he wanted. And I think that's really powerful. And he thought about that 100 years ago. And now we're talking again about sustainability and strategic plans and, you know, all these things. And I just see so much value in that piece that he wrote, that if we read today, we can find that there are many valuable things. Of course, we need to translate them into our context. But I think I would just say that was one of the most powerful things, because he didn't just want independence, like, oh, let's just get independence and let's see what happens. He wanted to have a plan for what was going to happen with people and their country after their independence, and to keep it in a way that was good for the society.
I'm glad that you mentioned constructive program, because I think, I mean, trying to find the right term for nonviolence is always hard. Like, people use civil resistance, but like, I've talked to people in VI about how like that phrase is sort of not ideal, because resistance implies like just protesting or boycotting, whereas constructive program is like, it's not confrontational, it's constructive, like you're building the world that you want to see. And I think that aspect of nonviolence is often overlooked when we're just thinking about like confrontational actions or like different types of protest. So I think, and I mean, constructive program isn't like a new idea, obviously, but I think even in the nonviolence world, like there's still so much to be like developed around it, right? Like it's still sort of, it's something still worth developing and implementing and thinking about how we can implement in our lives, you know?
Yes, and I think you have a very valuable point when you say the way you use the word constructive. I didn't look at it in that way before, but it's true. It's about building up on something, and how do we make things positive, right? So yeah, that's great. Thank you.
As we're wrapping up this interview, I think in the world today, it's so easy when we look at all these crises that we're facing to like fall into despair or like pessimism and cynicism and just feel like everything's hopeless. So I wanted to ask you, and end on a positive note, What inspires you? What gives you hope? And what sustains you in your work?
I love this question. And I have a very short answer for it. Well, the answer for the three questions is passion.
Mm.
I love to see people with passion. I think they move this world.
Mm.
I believe I'm a very passionate person, and that keeps me going. In every action, I just want to feel this intensity of I'm doing what I love, and I want to learn. I want to share. I want to. I just have this drive, and I think that is what also gives this hope to the world. These people who will never stop. They just want to get to a good point in society. It was a short answer, but I would just say passion.
Andrea, thank you so much for taking the time to be with me today. This is great.
Thank you. I'm pleased. Thank you.
If you think these conversations are important and would like to see them continue, please consider supporting NVI and the work we do by subscribing to this YouTube channel, following us on Twitter and Facebook, and visiting our website. Also, please consider donating to our organization. Every little bit counts to help build a more just and nonviolent world.